The chapel held no light, save for a single candle guttering on the altar. Sister Catherine knelt before it in the gray hour before dawn, her hands pressed together in the posture of prayer. The adobe walls breathed cold desert cold, the kind that seeped through wool and skin and settled in the marrow. She did not feel it. 15 years of mornings like this one had taught her body to ignore what her soul could not. The chill, the silence, the weight of memory that pressed down heavier than any winter. Her lips moved without sound. The same words, the same plea. Forgiveness for sins she could name, and sins she had buried so deep they had no names left, only shapes that moved behind her eyes when sleep wouldn't come. The candle flame danced. In its light, her hands cast shadows on the rough wooden pew before her, strong hands, steady hands. The fingers long and calloused in ways that had nothing to do with gardening or washing or any of the work a nun might do. The calluses sat at the base of her trigger finger, and the meat of her thumb hard ridges of skin, worn smooth by years of repetition. Thousands of rounds, thousands of pulls. The muscle memory never faded. She had learned that the hard way. Kate. Kate, run. Her eyes snapped open. The voice came from nowhere and everywhere. From the candle flame. From the blood rushing in her ears. From a night 15 years gone when the world had split in two and left her stranded on the wrong side. She breathed, counted. 3 in, hold, 3 out. The voice faded. The chapel was just a chapel again. Adobe and wood, and the faint smell of sage that drifted in from the desert through cracks in the walls. Sister Catherine Kate. She had been Kate once, but that woman was dead, buried under habit and vow, and years of penance unclenched her hands. Looked at them in the candlelight. The calluses were still there. They would never fade completely. Some marks went deeper than skin. The mission bell began to ring. She crossed herself, rose from the pew, and went to wake the children. The mission? Santa Maria de la Cruz sat in a shallow valley where the Chiricahua foothills met the desert floor 40 miles from the nearest town and 100 years from anywhere that mattered. It had been built by Franciscans in the previous century, abandoned, reclaimed, abandoned again. Now it served as an orphanage, 12 children with nowhere else to go, 4 aging nuns to tend them, and one woman who had come to them 15 years ago with blood on her hands and nowhere left to run. Kate moved through the dormitory with practiced, quiet touching, shoulders murmuring names. The children slept in rows of narrow cots. Boys on one side, girls on the other, a crucifix watching over each from its place on the wall. Dawn light was beginning to seep through the high windows, painting everything in shades of rose and gold. Thomas, time to wake. The oldest boy, 12 years old, with his father's dark eyes and his mother's stubborn jaw, did not stir. Kate knew he was awake. She could see it in the tension of his shoulders, the too careful rhythm of his breathing. Thomas Whitfield had not slept well since the night his father, the town mayor, a good man by all accounts, had been hanged for a murder he did not commit. That was 8 months ago. The boy had not spoken more than a dozen words to any adult since. Kate did not press. She moved on. Samuel, rise and shine. This one sat up immediately, rubbing sleep from his eyes with one hand, while reaching for the small leather Bible he kept beneath his pillow with the other. 10 years old, the son of a minister who had died of cholera, along with his mother and 3 sisters. Samuel's faith had not wavered. If anything, it had hardened into something fierce and demanding. He would test her today as he tested her every day, with questions she had no answers for. Good morning, Sister Kate. Good morning, Samuel. Dress quickly. Breakfast in 20 minutes. She moved to the girl's side. Lily lay curled around her ragdoll thumb and her mouth, eyes open and staring at nothing. 8 years old. She had not spoken since the night Comancheros had raided her family's farm. Her parents had hidden her in the root cellar. She had listened to them die. Kate crouched beside the cot, careful to stay in Lily's line of sight, careful not to touch. Good morning, little one. It's time to get up. Lily's eyes focused slowly. She saw Kate, saw the habit, the kind face, the familiar morning routine. Something in her shoulders relaxed. She sat up, clutching the doll to her chest, and Kate helped her dress without another word. Maria was last, the youngest at 6, a wisp of a girl, with dark hair and darker eyes, who had been left on the mission's doorstep as an infant. She had a gap-toothed smile and a laugh that could fill any room, and every time Kate looked at her, she felt something twist in her chest that she refused to name. Sister Kate, Maria launched herself out of bed and wrapped her arms around Kate's waist. I dreamed about horses, big ones with wing. Pegasus, Kate said, smoothing the girl's tangled hair. The Greeks told stories about a horse with wings. Can we get one? I think they're in short supply in Arizona territory. That's not fair. Many things aren't. Kate kissed the top of her head. Get dressed, help Lily with her buttons. She left them to it and stepped outside into the morning. The desert in first light was a country of ghosts. Kate stood on the mission's covered porch and watched the shadows retreat across the valley floor. Watched the saguaros emerge from darkness like sentinels frozen mid-step. Watched the mountains to the east catch fire with the rising sun. The air smelled of creosote and dust and the faintest hint of rain from somewhere far to the south monsoon season, building its strength not yet ready to break. She had learned to love this land, or perhaps not love. Perhaps simply to accept it the way one accepts a penance. The way one accepts a life that wasn't chosen so much as stumbled into. Behind her, the mission was waking. She could hear Sister Josephine clanging pots in the kitchen, Sister Mary humming a hymn off-key as she swept the chapel, Sister Margaret's patient voice leading the younger children in morning prayers. These sounds had become the rhythm of her days. Simple sounds, safe sounds. A world away from the hammer falling on an empty chamber. The spray of blood on adobe. Jacob's voice desperate, Kate behind you. Kate gripped the porch railing until her knuckles went white. She breathed, counted, in and out. The past retreated. When she turned to go inside, she found Thomas watching her from the doorway. His dark eyes missed nothing. You do that a lot, he said. Do what? Go away in your head. He crossed his arms. Where do you go? Kate considered lying, considered deflecting, considered the convenient exit of rank and authority. That's not your concern, young man, but something in the boy's face stopped her. He was asking because he went away too, because his head was full of things he couldn't escape. Nowhere good, she said finally. Nowhere I want to be. Thomas nodded slowly. It was the most honest thing an adult had said to him in months. Breakfast in 10 minutes, Kate said and went inside. The trouble started at midday. Kate was in the vegetable garden behind the mission, showing the children how to check the tomato plants for hornworms when she heard the shouting. Thomas's voice high and angry, and then the sound of a fist hitting flesh. She was moving before she knew it, habit flying behind her boots, kicking up dust. Around the corner of the dormitory building, past the well into the shade of the old cottonwood, where the children weren't supposed to play because the branches were rotten, and Thomas had Samuel pinned against the tree trunk. His fist was drawn back for another blow. Samuel's lip was already bleeding. Think you're better than everyone because you pray all the time. Kate grabbed Thomas's wrist. What happened next was pure instinct. 15 years of chapel and children in peaceful mornings, and beneath it all the reflexes of a woman who had killed her first man at 19 and her 10th before 25. She didn't just stop Thomas's arm, she controlled it, wrenching it behind his back and sweeping his feet out from under him in a single fluid motion that left him face down in the dirt with her knee on his spine. Silence. The other children had gathered in a half circle. They stared at her with wide eyes. Samuel wiped blood from his chin and stared too. Kate looked down at Thomas beneath her, looked at her own hands still gripping his arm hard enough to bruise, looked at the position she had put him in, a restraint position, a combat position, something no nun had any business knowing. She released him so fast she nearly fell backward. Her voice came out strange, shaking. Thomas, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. The boy scrambled to his feet. He wasn't looking at her with fear exactly. It was something else, recognition, like he was seeing her for the first time. Who are you? He whispered. Kate had no answer. She stood there in the shade of the cottonwood, surrounded by children who were suddenly looking at their gentle sister Kate like she was a stranger, and she felt the wall she had built so carefully over 15 years begin to crack. Sister Kate. She turned. Sister Margaret stood at the corner of the building, her aged face tight with concern. Mother Agnes is asking for you. She says it's urgent. Kate looked at the children, at Thomas still staring, at Samuel touching his split lip, at Lily clutching her doll so hard the stitching might tear. All of you, she said, and her voice sounded almost normal, almost calm. Go with Sister Margaret. We'll talk about this later. She didn't wait to see if they obeyed. She walked toward the main building with measured steps, her heart hammering against her ribs, her hands, those damn treacherous hands, clenched into fists at her sides. Mother Agnes was dying. Kate had known it for weeks, had seen it in the grayness of the old woman's skin, the way she tired so quickly, the cough that had settled in her chest and refused to leave. But knowing and accepting were different things. The Mother Superior's cell was small and sparse, a narrow bed, a wooden chair, a crucifix on the wall, a window that looked out on the mountains. Agnes lay propped against pillows, her breathing shallow and labored, her eyes bright with fever. Kate knelt beside the bed and took her hand. Mother. Catherine. Agnes's voice was barely a whisper. I need you to listen carefully. There isn't much time. Don't talk like that. I'll send for the buster in a no. The grip on Kate's hand tightened with surprising strength. The doctor can't help me. We both know that. What I need is for you to listen. Kate closed her mouth, nodded. Agnes reached beneath her pillow and withdrew two defolded letters, their wax seals already broken. These came yesterday. I didn't tell you because I needed time to think, to pray. She pressed them into Kate's hands. Read the first one. Kate unfolded the paper. The handwriting was neat, official. Dear Mother Superior, we are pleased to inform you that St. Joseph's Home for Orphan Children in San Francisco is prepared to accept the 12 children currently in your care. Our facility offers education, vocational training, and placement with approved families. However, due to limited capacity and an upcoming review of our finances by the diocese, we can only guarantee spaces if the children arrive before March 15th. This gives you 3 weeks from the date of this letter. Please confirm your intention to proceed at your earliest convenience. Kate lowered the letter. 3 weeks. San Francisco. A real chance for the children, a city with schools and doctors and futures that didn't end in dust and poverty. It was more than she had dared to hope for. This is wonderful news, Mother. We can hire an escort, a coach. Read the other letter. Kate's hands were already trembling as she unfolded it. Something in Agnes's voice told her what was coming. Something in her own gut had been waiting for this moment for 15 years. Wanted Jacob Moran for the murders of Robert Denton, William Hurst, and Miguel Reyes in Tucson, Arizona territory. Description: male, approximately 45 years old. 6 feet 1 inch, dark hair, now graying, scar on left side of face, missing the last 2 fingers of his left hand. Moran was released from Yuma Territorial Prison 6 months ago after serving 10 years. He is considered armed and extremely dangerous. Last seen heading west toward California. A reward of $500 is offered for information leading to his capture. The letter slipped from Kate's fingers. No, the word came out broken. No, he was supposed to stay in prison. He had 15 years. He was released early. Agnes's eyes were fixed on Kate's face. For good behavior, apparently. The man who came out of Yuma is not the man who went in. Kate couldn't breathe. The room was too small. The walls were closing in. She stood up so fast the chair toppled, paced to the window, pressed her forehead against the cool glass. Jacob. She could still see his face as they had dragged him away. The blood running from the gash on his temple. The desperation in his eyes as he had screamed at her to run. And she had run. God help her, she had run, and she had never looked back. He's killing again. Kate's voice sounded hollow. He's killing and he's heading west, and you're the only one who can protect those children. Kate spun around. What? Agnes was trying to sit up, her frail body shaking with the effort. Listen to me, Catherine. I saved you 15 years ago. I took you in when you were broken and bleeding and carrying a child that... A child that you lost 3 days after you arrived, and I never asked you a single question. I never demanded to know who you were or what you had done. I only saw a woman in need of mercy, and I gave it. Tears were burning in Kate's eyes. Mother, please. I'm dying. Agnes's voice cracked. The doctor says days, perhaps a week. There is no one else, Catherine. Sister Margaret is 65 and half blind. Sister Josephine has never held anything more dangerous than a kitchen knife. Sister Mary still believes that prayer alone can stop evil. She fell back against the pillows, exhausted by her outburst. You were something else before you were Sister Catherine. I don't know what. I don't want to know. But I know that when you took Thomas down today, You moved like a woman who has done violence and survived it. Kate stood frozen. Those children need to reach San Francisco. Agnes continued, each word costing her. 300 miles through territory that Jacob Moran may be traveling to. If he finds them, finds you, he might not be looking for me. Can you be certain, Kate couldn't. That was the hell of it. She couldn't be certain of anything except that the man she had loved, the man she had abandoned, the man who had rotted in Yuma because she had been too broken and too afraid to try to save him, that man was out in the world again, and he was killing. I pray every morning, Kate whispered. Every morning for 15 years, asking God to forgive me for what I was, what I did. Agnes reached out her hand. Kate took it, kneeling again beside the bed. God forgave you the moment you asked, child. He has been waiting all this time for you to forgive yourself. The old woman's eyes were full of something fierce and sad. Perhaps this is your chance. Not for penance, but for purpose. You have the skills to protect those children. The question is whether you have the courage to use them. Kate bowed her head. The calluses on her hands burned like brands. What if I become what I was? What were you, a killer, a hunter, a woman who laughed while the blood cooled on her guns? Someone I never want to be again. Agnes squeezed her hand. Then don't become her. Become someone new, someone who uses the old skills for a new purpose. A faint smile crossed her weathered face. The gun and the cross are not as far apart as you think, Catherine. Both require sacrifice. Both require the willingness to lay down one's life for others. Kate closed her eyes. Behind her eyelids she saw the children. Thomas with his anger and his loss. Samuel with his relentless faith. Lily with her silence. Maria with her laugh that could light up the darkest room. She saw Jacob too. Not the monster the wanted poster described, but the man she had known. The one who had promised her California and a future. The one who had told her to run because he loved her. The one who might be hunting her now. I need to think, Kate said. There's no time. Agnes's voice was fading. Tomorrow. You leave tomorrow. I've already asked Sister Josephine to prepare supplies. Mother. Promise me. The grip on Kate's hand was suddenly iron. Promise me you'll get them to San Francisco. Whatever it takes. Whatever you have to become. Promise me. Kate looked at the dying woman who had saved her life, who had given her 15 years of peace in a world that offered none. I promise, Agnes smiled. Her eyes fluttered closed. Good, she breathed. Good, now let me rest. I think I would like to sleep for a while. Kate stayed beside her until the old woman's breathing deepened into something that might have been sleep and might have been the beginning of something else. Then she rose and went to find the gun she had buried 15 years ago. The storage room behind the chapel was thick with dust and shadows. Kate moved through it by memory and touch, past crates of old vestments and boxes of candles and a broken harmonium that no one had bothered to repair. In the far corner beneath a tarp that had once been white sat a wooden chest, her chest. She had asked Agnes to keep it all those years ago, had told herself it was because she might need it someday, might need the things inside it. The truth was simpler and uglier, and she hadn't been able to let go. Some part of her even then had known that the woman she was trying to become would never fully eclipse the woman she had been. Kate knelt before the chest. Her hands, those telltale hands, shook as she lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth and smelling faintly of gun oil, lay the tools of her former life. A Colt single-action Army .44-40 caliber. Custom grip worn smooth by years of use. She had killed 11 men with this gun. The 12th had been with a knife, a leather gun belt with 23 empty loops, and a holster that had been custom fitted by a saddler in El Paso who had asked no questions. A hunting knife with a 7-inch blade. Her father had given it to her on her 16th birthday, the same day he had taught her to gut a deer. And beneath it all, a folded tintype photograph. Kate lifted it carefully, held it to the fading light from the single high window. Two faces looked back at her. A young woman with dark hair and laughing eyes, her arm around a tall man with a crooked smile and a scar on his chin. They were standing in front of a cantina somewhere in New Mexico, and they looked like people who believed they would live forever. Jacob and Kate. Kate and Jacob. The Moran gang, some called them, though it had never been more than the two of them. Bounty hunters, manhunters. People who did violence for pay and told themselves it was justice. Kate stared at the photograph for a long time. Then she folded it, slipped it into the pocket of her habit, and picked up the gun. The weight of it was familiar. Obscenely familiar. She checked the cylinder, empty of course, and dry-fired at the wall. The motion came back like breathing. Point, squeeze, follow through, bang, you're dead. She closed her eyes. God, if you're listening, and I have to believe you are, because what else do I have? Help me do this right. Help me protect them. Help me use this thing without letting it use me. No answer came. Maybe that was answer enough. Kate loaded the gun with rounds from a box in the chest. Still good, she noted the lead unoxidized and strapped the belt around her waist beneath her habit. It sat heavy on her hips, a weight she had almost forgotten, a weight she had never stopped feeling. She hid the knife in her boot. She left the photograph where it was, and she went to tell the children they were leaving in the morning. The dining hall was silent when Kate entered. 12 children sat at the long wooden table, their bowls of stew untouched, their eyes following her as she moved to the head of the room. The other sisters were there too, Margaret with her worry lines, Josephine still wearing her kitchen apron, Mary with her rosary clutched in both hands. They had heard. News traveled fast in a small mission. Kate stopped at the head of the table. She looked at each child in turn. Thomas still watching her with that unnerving recognition. Samuel, his split lips swelling. Lily invisible behind her wall of silence. Maria too young to understand the tension, but old enough to feel it. Mother Agnes is very sick, Kate said. She may not have much time left. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Samuel began to pray under his breath. Thomas didn't react at all. Before she fell asleep, she gave me a mission. A letter came from San Francisco. There's a home there, a good home that wants to take all of you in. You'll have school, clothes, warm beds, families eventually. What's the catch? Thomas's voice was flat. There's always a catch. The catch is we have 3 weeks to get there, 300 miles, and we have to go now tomorrow because if we wait, she hesitated. How much to tell them? How much did they need to know? There's a bad man out there, Maria whispered. Isn't there, Sister Kate? Kate looked at the little girl at those dark eyes that saw too much. Yes, there might be. That's why I'm going to take you myself. Murmurs from the other sisters. Sister Mary stepped forward, her rosary clinking. Catherine, this is madness. You can't possibly, a woman alone with 12 children, the dangers. I know the dangers. Kate's voice came out harder than she intended. I know them better than any of you. She looked at Thomas. You asked me earlier who I am. You want to know. Before I was Sister Catherine, I was someone else. Someone who did things I'm not proud of. Someone who learned to survive in places like the territory we're about to cross. She reached beneath her habit and drew the Colt. Gasps from the sisters, wide eyes from the children, but Thomas leaned forward, and for the first time since she had met him, there was something other than anger in his face. Interest. Recognition. I know how to use this, Kate said. I wish I didn't. I've spent 15 years praying I would never have to again. But if it comes down to a choice between my soul and your lives, she holstered the gun, let the habit fall back into place. I choose you, all of you. Silence. Then Samuel spoke, his voice high and clear. If Sister Kate is going to protect us, then who's going to protect Sister Kate? Kate almost smiled. I suppose that'll be up to God. And me. Thomas stood up from the table. I'm 12. I can help. I can learn. Thomas, my father taught me to shoot before he... The boy's voice caught. He swallowed hard. Before he taught me. I'm not good, but I can learn. Kate looked at him, at the determination in his young face, at the anger that was finally finding somewhere to go. We'll see, she said. For now, everyone finish your supper and get to bed early. We leave at dawn. Kate did not sleep that night. She sat in the chapel instead, in the same pew where she had knelt that morning, and she watched the candle burn down to nothing. The gun sat heavy on her hip, the knife pressed against her ankle. The photograph burned in her pocket like a coal. Jacob. She tried to remember him as he had been, young and laughing quick with a joke, faster with a gun. He had found her in a saloon in Santa Fe when she was 22, a girl running from a dead father and a past she couldn't name. He had taught her to shoot, taught her to track, taught her to survive in a world that didn't care if she lived or died. And somewhere along the way, he had taught her to love. 3 years they had ridden together. 3 years of hunting men for bounty, of sleeping under stars, of making plans for a future that seemed so close. She could taste it. The baby had been a surprise. A good surprise, Jacob said. A sign. Time to stop running, stop hunting, stop killing. Buy that ranch in California. Raise horses. Be normal people. Then the law had come for him. Kate closed her eyes and she was there again 15 years ago. The hotel room in Nogales. Jacob's blood on the floor. His voice desperate. Kate, run. Don't look back. Just run, and she had run. Through the desert alone, pregnant and terrified, she had run until she couldn't run anymore. Until she had collapsed on the doorstep of a mission in the middle of nowhere, bleeding and broken, and praying for death. 3 days later, she had lost the baby. 3 weeks after that, she had taken her vows. 15 years since then, and she had never stopped running. Not really. The mission was just another place to hide, another way to pretend that Kate the killer was dead and gone. But she wasn't. She was still here, still breathing, still carrying those calloused hands and that treacherous muscle memory and all the violence she had ever done. And now Jacob was out there somewhere, changed, killing again, maybe looking for her. Did he blame her for running? For leaving him to rot in Yuma while she found peace in a place he could never reach? She would blame her. She did blame her. Kate opened her eyes. The candle had guttered out. Dawn was a gray suggestion at the high windows. Time to go. She rose from the pew, crossed herself, and walked out of the chapel and into the uncertain light of a new day. Sister Margaret found her as she was saddling the horses. Mother Agnes passed in the night, the old nun said. Her voice was steady, but tears tracked down her weathered cheeks. Peacefully, in her sleep, just as she wanted. Kate's hands stilled on the cinch. She had known. Some part of her had known the moment she'd left that room yesterday. But knowing and hearing were different things. Did she say anything at the end? She was speaking to someone we couldn't see. Margaret wiped her eyes with the hem of her sleeve. She called them by name. Someone called Jacob. Kate's blood went cold. She said, forgive her. She did what she had to do. Forgive her. The horse shifted beneath Kate's hands. She forced herself to finish tightening the saddle, forced her fingers to work, forced her voice to stay level. I want you to bury her in the garden, she said, next to the roses she loved. I would stay for the service, but I know. Margaret touched her arm. The children are ready. We packed food for 2 weeks. It was all we could spare. Water barrels in the wagon, bedding, the old medical kit. Kate turned to face her. The older woman looked small and frail in the dawn light, and suddenly Kate realized that she might never see her again, might never see this mission, this chapel, this place that had been sanctuary for 15 years. Thank you, Kate said, for everything, for all of it. Bring them safely home, Catherine. Margaret squeezed her hand, and then find your way home too, whatever that means. Kate nodded. She didn't trust her voice. She led the horse toward the wagon where 12 children waited in various states of fear and excitement. The other sisters were there to see them off, hands raised in blessing, prayers murmured into the morning air. Kate climbed onto the wagon seat. Thomas appeared at her side and hauled himself up beside her, his jaw set with determination. I'm riding up front, he said. It wasn't a question. Fine, Kate gathered the reins. But when I say get down, you get down. No arguments. Yes, ma'am. She looked back at the children, huddled in the wagon bed. Samuel had his Bible open, lips moving in prayer. Lily clutched her doll. Maria was already asleep, curled against the youngest boys for warmth. Everyone hold on, Kate called. It's going to be a long ride. She snapped the reins. The wagon lurched forward. The mission began to shrink behind them. Adobe and bells and roses. The only home these children had ever known. The only peace Kate had found in 15 years of searching. Ahead, the desert stretched endless and unknown. Somewhere out there, Jacob Moran was hunting, and Kate, gun on her hip, knife in her boot, children behind her. God only knew what before her was riding to meet him. The first 3 days passed in a blur of dust and distance. Kate kept the wagon moving from first light until the sun hung low and red on the western horizon, pushing the horses as hard as she dared, always watching the trail behind them. The children learned quickly not to complain, not about the heat, not about the jolting ride, not about the monotony of hardtack and dried beef that made up their meals. They learned because Kate didn't complain either, and because Thomas glared at anyone who started to whine, and because somewhere in the back of their young minds, they understood that this journey was not an adventure, but a flight. On the morning of the fourth day, Maria climbed up onto the wagon seat beside Kate. "Sister Kate, yes, little one, are there monsters in the desert?" Kate kept her eyes on the horizon. The Chiricahua Mountains rose to the north, purple and distant, and somewhere beyond them lay the road to California. Between here and there stretched 100 miles of territory that belonged to no one and everyone, outlaws, Apaches, and worse. "There are dangerous things," Kate said carefully, "but not monsters." "What kind of dangerous things?" "Snakes, scorpions, men who make bad choices." Maria considered this. "Can you protect us from all of them?" Kate thought about the gun on her hip, the knife in her boot, the 15 years of peaceful living that had done nothing to dull her reflexes. She thought about Jacob somewhere out there hunting or hunted, and the wanted poster burning in her pocket. "I can try." "That's not a yes." "No," Kate agreed. "It isn't." Maria was quiet for a long moment. Then she leaned against Kate's shoulder and said, "I think you can. You're scarier than any monster." Kate almost smiled. "Is that supposed to be a compliment?" "Yes." "Then thank you." From the back of the wagon, Thomas was watching them. His dark eyes missed nothing. Kate could feel the weight of his attention like a physical thing, calculating, measuring, trying to fit her into a framework that made sense. She was a nun who carried a gun, a woman of God who had killed men, a gentle teacher who could put a 12-year-old boy face down in the dirt before he knew what was happening. She was a contradiction, and contradictions made Thomas nervous. On the fifth day, they reached Willow Springs. It wasn't much a natural seep in a fold of the hills, surrounded by a few scraggly cottonwoods and the remains of an old stage station that had been abandoned during the Apache Wars. But there was water and shade, and Kate decided to rest the horses for a few hours before pushing on. The children scattered to stretch their legs, warned to stay within sight of the wagon. Kate watered the horses first, then began filling their reserve barrels. The work was slow and tedious, but it kept her hands busy and her mind from wandering to places she didn't want it to go. She didn't hear the riders approach until they were almost on top of her. 3 of them. Rough men on rough horses, wearing the dust of hard travel and the expressions of people who had long ago stopped caring about the law. They came down the slope from the east, spreading out as they approached, and Kate felt her hand drift toward her gun before she consciously decided to move it. Well. The leader was a heavy-set man with a beard that might have been red before the sun bleached it gray. He reined in his horse a dozen feet from the wagon, his eyes taking in Kate's habit. The children, the supplies. "A nun out here alone." "Not alone, though." Kate stepped away from the water barrel, giving herself room to move. "As you can see." The man laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Kids don't count, sister. What I mean is no man. No escort." He leaned forward in his saddle, and Kate saw the hunger in his eyes. Not the kind of hunger that could be fed with food. That's mighty dangerous, a woman traveling alone with a wagon full of goods and a bunch of little mouths to feed. Anything could happen out here. Bandits, Apaches. He grinned, showing yellow teeth. "Bad men." "Bad men," Kate repeated. Her voice was flat calm, betraying nothing of the cold calculations running through her mind. 3 of them, mounted. She could get 2 before the third cleared leather, maybe all 3 if they were as slow as they looked. But the children were scattered. If one man got past her, that's right. The man swung down from his horse. His companions followed suit. "Now, we ain't looking for trouble, sister. We're just travelers, same as you, looking to share some water, maybe some of those supplies you got in that wagon. Christian charity, you might call it." "I might call it theft." The man's eyes hardened. "That ain't a friendly thing to say." "I'm not feeling friendly." "Thomas," Kate's voice cut through the tension, calm and clear. "Take the children behind the wagon. Now." From the corner of her eye, she saw the boy hesitate. His fists clenched, his jaw tight with the need to fight back against something, anything, after months of helplessness. But something in Kate's voice must have convinced him, because he started gathering the others, herding them toward cover with quick, efficient movements. The leader watched him go. Smart boy, smart nun too, maybe. If you just hand over what we want. Kate drew. The motion was liquid, unhurried, the product of 1,000 repetitions in a life she had tried to leave behind. Her Colt cleared the holster, rose steadied. The hammer was back before the man finished his sentence. She fired. The bullet took his hat clean off his head, passing so close to his ear that he must have felt the wind of it. The hat hit the dust behind him. The man froze his hand halfway to his own weapon, his face gone pale beneath the beard. Silence. Kate held the gun steady, smoke curling from the barrel. The next one goes 6 inches lower, so does the one after that. She shifted her aim slightly, covering the all three. You boys want to test whether I can count to 3? They didn't. The leader raised his hand slowly, carefully. His companions did the same. We don't want no trouble, the leader said. His voice had lost its swagger. We'll just be on our way. Good idea. They mounted up, awkward, with their hands raised, and rode back the way they had come. Kate watched them until they were specks against the brown hills. Only then did she lower the gun. Her hand was steady. Her heart was not. Thomas appeared at her elbow. She hadn't heard him approach. You could have killed him, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes. Why didn't you? Kate looked at the boy, at the dark eyes so full of anger and loss, so desperate to understand a world that had taken everything from him. Because killing should be the last choice, she said. Not the first, not the easy one. Thomas nodded slowly. He looked at the gun still smoking in her hand, then back at her face. Can you teach me to shoot like that? Thomas, please. His voice cracked. I need to be able to protect them. The little ones. If something happens to you... He stopped, swallowed, started again. My father taught me some before, but not enough, not nearly enough. Kate slid the gun back into its holster. She looked at Thomas, really looked at him, and saw herself at that age angry, afraid, desperate for any tool that might help her survive in a world that didn't care if she lived or died. I'll teach you, she said, but not today. Today, we ride. She turned back to the wagon, began securing the water barrels, pretending not to notice, when Thomas wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. The rattlesnake bit Maria on the 6th night. Kate had made camp in a dry wash, sheltered from the wind by the high banks and screened from distant eyes by a thick stand of mesquite. It wasn't ideal. There was no water, no easy escape route, but the horses were tired and the children more so. She had decided to risk it. The scream woke her from a half-sleep, her gun in her hand before her eyes were fully open. Sister Kate, Sister Kate. She was running before she knew it, following the sound of Maria's voice crashing through the mesquite in her bare feet. The children were sleeping in a cluster near the wagon, but Maria wasn't with them. She had gone to relieve herself. Kate realized, gone off into the dark alone because she was 6 years old and embarrassed to ask for help. She found her 20 feet from the kite, curled on the ground, clutching her left ankle. Even in the moonlight, Kate could see the twin puncture marks, the swelling already beginning. Rattlesnake. Western diamondback, probably. 6 years old, 40 pounds. The venom would work fast. Kate dropped to her knees beside the girl. Maria, Maria, look at me. She cradled the child's face in her hands, forcing her to focus. Look at me. You're going to be all right. Do you understand? You're going to be fine. It hurts. Maria's voice was tiny, terrified. Sister Kate, it hurts so bad. I know, sweetheart, I know. Kate was already reaching for her knife, already running through the steps in her mind. Cut, suck, spit, bandage, pray. I need you to be brave for me. Can you do that? Thomas appeared at her side, breathing hard, eyes wide. What do I do? He asked. Get my medical kit from the wagon. Now, and bring water. The boy ran. Kate turned back to Maria. The child was shaking, her skin gone clammy, her breathing too fast. First stages of shock. Kate had seen it before in men who had been shot or stabbed or trampled by horses. She knew what came next if she didn't act quickly. This is going to hurt, she told Maria. I'm sorry, but it's going to hurt. You can scream if you need to, but you need to hold still. Can you do that for me? Maria nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. Kate cut. The blade was sharp, the incision precise, 2 small lines crossing the puncture marks, just deep enough to let the blood flow. Maria screamed a sound that would echo in Kate's nightmares for years to come, but she held still. Brave girl, brave, brave girl. Kate bent to the wound and sucked, pulling poison and blood into her mouth and spitting it into the dirt. Again, again, again. She had no idea if it was working. Some people said this was useless, that the venom spread too fast, but she had to try. She had to do something. Thomas returned with the medical kit and a canteen. Kate rinsed her mouth, spat, rinsed again. Then she bandaged Maria's ankle with strips of clean cloth tight enough to slow the blood flow, but not tight enough to cut off circulation entirely. "We need to keep her still," Kate said. "Keep the ankle below her heart. And we need to get her to a doctor as soon as—" "There's no doctor," Thomas said. "The nearest town is 3 days away." Kate knew that. She had known it the moment she saw the snake bite, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way that twisted something in her chest. "Then we pray," she said. Thomas looked at her. "Does that actually work?" Kate gathered Maria into her arms, carried her back to the camp, laid her down on a blanket near the embers of their fire. The other children were awake, clustered together, their eyes huge with fear. "It's the only thing I know how to do," Kate said, "when everything else fails." She knelt beside Maria and began to pray. Not the formal prayers of her order, the structured liturgies and carefully worded petitions that she had memorized over 15 years. This was something raw, something that came from the part of her that had existed before the habit and the vow, the part that had loved and lost and nearly died of grief. "Please," she prayed, "please, God, if you're listening, don't take this one. I've lost so much. Let me keep her. Let me save her. Take me instead. If that's what it costs, take me." The night stretched on. Maria's fever rose. Kate bathed her forehead with cool water, held her hand, prayed until her voice gave out. Thomas stayed beside her the whole time, silent, watchful, his earlier questions about gone in prayer, forgotten in the face of something that needed no explanation. Dawn came gray and cold. Maria was still alive. Her fever had broken sometime in the darkest hours. Her breathing had steadied. The swelling in her ankle had stopped spreading. Kate didn't know if it was the treatment or the prayers or simple luck, but she didn't care. She laid her head on the blanket beside Maria and wept great racking sobs that shook her whole body, the first tears she had allowed herself since Agnes died. Thomas watched her cry. He didn't look away. When Kate finally raised her head, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, the boy said, "You really love her? All of them?" It wasn't a question. "Yes," Kate said. Her voice was hoarse. "I really do." Thomas nodded slowly. Something in his face had changed. Some wall had come down. Some door had opened. "Okay," he said. "Then I'll help you, whatever it takes." Kate reached out and squeezed his hand. He didn't pull away. On the 7th day, Kate began teaching them to survive, not to fight. She wouldn't put weapons in the hands of children, not even Thomas, not yet, but to hide, to run, to stay alive long enough for help to arrive. She showed them how to find cover in open terrain, how to make themselves small, how to move quietly when quiet mattered. She taught them signals, 3 short whistles for danger, 1 long whistle for all clear, silence for wait and watch. The children took to it with the adaptability of the young. Even Lily, mute behind her wall of silence, learned the signals and practiced the movements. Maria, still recovering but already restless, insisted on learning too, hobbling through the exercises on her bandaged ankle. Only Samuel resisted. "I don't understand," he said on the 2nd day of training, his Bible clutched to his chest like a shield. "Why do we need to learn this? God will protect us." Kate paused in the middle of demonstrating a low crawl. The other children watched, waiting to see what she would say. "God works through people, Samuel," she said carefully, "through their hands and their choices. I believe he sent me to protect you. But I can't protect you if you won't let me help you protect yourselves. But if we truly have faith, faith isn't passive." Kate's voice sharpened. "Faith is action. It's doing the work that needs to be done and trusting that God will guide your hands. Your father was a minister, yes." Samuel nodded, his eyes suspicious. "Did he ever tell you about David and Goliath?" "Of course. David had faith, but he also picked up a stone." Kate stood, brushed dust from her habit. "Sometimes faith means knowing when to fight, and sometimes it means knowing when to run. Right now, I'm teaching you to run. Is that acceptable?" Samuel considered this for a long moment. Then reluctantly, he set down his Bible and joined the others. Thomas fell into step beside Kate as she circled the group, correcting postures and adjusting grips. "You're good at this," he said quietly. "Teaching. I've been teaching for 15 years. Not this kind of teaching. Kate didn't answer. She watched the children practice their movements. Watched Maria hobble determinedly through a drill, despite the pain in her ankle. Watched Samuel's reluctant participation gradually become genuine engagement. What happened to you, Thomas asked. Before. Before the mission. It was the question she had been waiting for since the day she had taken him down in the dust. The question she had no good answer for, or rather no answer that wouldn't shatter everything she had tried to become. I was someone else, she said. Someone who did bad things for what she thought were good reasons. Did you kill people? Yes. A lot of people. Kate stopped walking. She looked at Thomas at his dark eyes that saw too much his young face, that had already learned too much about loss and betrayal. 12, she said. That I know of. Thomas didn't flinch, didn't pull away, just nodded, processing this information the way he processed everything carefully, thoroughly, without judgment. Do you regret it? Every day? Then why do you still carry that gun? Kate touched the holster at her hip, felt the familiar weight of the Colt through the fabric of her habit, because some of them were going to hurt people, kill people, and I was the only one who could stop them. She paused. The gun isn't evil, Thomas. It's a tool. What matters is the hand that holds it and the heart that guides that hand. So if I learn to shoot, if you learn to shoot, you'll have a choice: to protect or to destroy, to save or to kill. Kate met his eyes. I pray you never have to make that choice. But if you do, I want you to be ready. Thomas was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, he said, teach me. On the 10th day, they reached the ghost town. It had been a mining camp once, Silver Creek, according to the weathered sign that still stood at the edge of what passed for a main street. The silver had played out years ago, and the miners had moved on, leaving behind a collection of buildings slowly returning to the desert from which they had been carved. Kate decided to stop here. The horses needed rest, the children needed shelter, and she needed time to think about the territory ahead. The next 100 miles would take them through the heart of Apache country, where the trails were uncertain and the dangers very real. She set the children to gathering firewood and exploring the more stable buildings with strict instructions to stay in pairs and shout if they saw anything strange. Thomas she kept close, helping her scout the perimeter and set up camp in what had once been the mining company's office. I'm going to check the far end of town, she told him. Stay with the others. If anything happens, 3 whistles and get them into cover. Thomas nodded. His hand drifted toward the knife at his belt. Kate had given it to him that morning, a smaller blade than her own, but just as sharp. I'll keep them safe. I know you will. Kate moved down the empty street, her senses alert, her hand resting on her gun. The buildings watched her pass with dark windows, their silence broken only by the creak of wind-swung signs and the skitter of some small animal fleeing at her approach. She was 100 yards from the camp when she heard voices. Not the children. These were lower masculine, coming from somewhere ahead and to her left. Kate slowed, eased into the shadow of a collapsed stable and listened. Telling you I seen 'em. Wagon 12 kids, 1 woman. None looked like. A nun, a second voice deeper, with an accent Kate couldn't place. Alone. Far as I could tell. She's got a gun, though. Saw her use it. She's fast. Silence. Then the second voice again. How far? Mile, maybe 2. Camped in the old mining office. Kids are all over the place. Easy pickings if we... No. Kate pressed herself against the stable wall, barely breathing. We watch. We wait. We follow. Cortez wants to know where they're going before we move. A pause. You did good, Miguel. Go back, tell the others what you saw. I'll stay. Keep eyes on them. Footsteps moving away. Kate counted heartbeats, waiting until the sound faded to nothing. Then she moved. Silently, carefully, she circled around to the building where the voices had come from. It was the old assayer's office, half its roof caved in. Through a gap in the wall, she could see a man sitting on an overturned crate, his back to her, watching the street. She could kill him. It would be easy. Come up behind him, knife across the throat, silent and quick. He would never know what happened. The thought slid through her mind like a snake, familiar and cold. She had done it before. More than once. In the old days, the days she tried not to remember, it would have been the obvious choice. But this wasn't the old days, and she wasn't that person anymore. Are you Kate gripped the knife in her hand, felt its weight, its purpose. The man in the building would report back to someone named Cortez. He would tell them exactly where the children were camped, exactly how vulnerable they were. She could stop that, permanently, or she could choose differently. Kate lowered the knife, backed away, returned to the camp by a different route, moving silent as a ghost through the abandoned streets. She found Thomas where she had left him standing guard at the door of the mining office. The younger children clustered behind him. "We're leaving," Kate said. "Now, no arguments. Pack everything quickly and quietly." Thomas's eyes widened, but he didn't question. He turned and started moving, gathering children, gathering supplies, spreading the urgency with a look and a gesture. Within 15 minutes, they were back on the trail, pushing west as fast as the horses could manage. Kate didn't look back, but she knew with cold certainty that they were no longer alone. He was sitting by their campfire when she returned. Kate had ridden out at dusk to scout the trail ahead, leaving Thomas in charge with strict instructions to stay quiet and stay ready. She had been gone perhaps 2 hours, long enough to confirm that the path through Apache Pass was still passable, that the spring at 3 Points still held water. Not long enough for this. She reined in her horse at the edge of the firelight and stared. Jacob Moran sat cross-legged on the ground surrounded by children. Maria was in his lap. Samuel was leaning against his shoulder. Even Lily had crept close, her ragdoll forgotten, listening with something like wonder in her eyes. He was telling them a story. And then the horse said to the coyote, "You think you're clever, but I've got 4 legs and you've only got 4 paws." "That doesn't make sense," Maria objected. "They both have 4. "Ah, but the horse's legs are longer. That's the important part." Kate drew her gun. "Get away from them." Jacob didn't move, didn't even turn around. "If you wanted to shoot me, Katie, you've had 15 years to do it." He kept his voice light, conversational, as though she weren't pointing a loaded weapon at his back. "Lower the gun. You're scaring the children." "They should be scared. You're a murderer." Now Jacob turned. The firelight caught his face, older than she remembered, harder marked by a scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw. His left eye was milky and blind. His left hand was missing 2 fingers. Yuma had taken a great deal from him, but his right eye was the same, dark and warm, and knowing her better than she knew herself. "So are you," he said simply. "Yet here you are protecting little ones instead of hunting big game. People change, Kate, even people like us." "I'm not like you, not anymore." "No," Jacob stood, slowly keeping his hands visible, his movements unthreatening. Maria clung to his leg and he gently disentangled her, nudging her toward the other children. "Then put down the gun and talk to me. Like civilized people. Like the 2 idiots who used to dream about raising horses in California." Kate's aim didn't waver, but something in her chest cracked at those words, at the memory they conjured, nights under stars, whispered plans, a future that had seemed so close before it was torn away. "You killed 3 men in Tucson." "I did." "Why?" "Because they were going to kill a woman and her daughter, because I walked into a saloon at the wrong time and saw something I couldn't walk away from." Jacob spread his hands. "I'm not asking you to forgive me, Kate. I'm not even asking you to believe me. I'm just asking you to listen." "Why should I?" "Because there are 20 banditos following you. Because their leader is a man named Cortez, who trades in children. Because you're one woman with a wagon full of kids and a 3-week deadline, and I'm offering to help." Kate felt the blood drain from her face. 20. She had known there were men following them. The conversation she had overheard in Silver Creek had told her that much, but 20. "How do you know about the deadline?" "I know a lot of things." Jacob's voice was quiet. "I've been following you since the mission, keeping my distance, watching." He paused. "I also know about Agnes. I'm sorry, Kate. She was a good woman." "Don't," Kate's voice cracked. "Don't you dare talk about her. You don't have the right." "No, I don't." Jacob took a step forward, and Kate's gun tracked with him. He stopped. "But I'm here anyway, because whatever else I am, whatever I've become, I won't let children be sold to minors in Mexico. Not if there's anything I can do to stop it." Thomas appeared at Kate's elbow. She hadn't heard him approach. The boy was learning faster than she'd expected. "Is he telling the truth?" Thomas asked. "About the men following us?" Kate looked at Jacob. Looked at his scarred face, his knowing eyes, the way he held himself older. harder but still recognizable as the man she had loved in another lifetime. Yes, she said finally, he's telling the truth. Then we need his help. Thomas, you taught me that survival means making hard choices. The boy's voice was steady. This seems like a hard choice to me. Kate lowered the gun. Not all the way, she kept it at her side, hammer cocked, ready to raise, but low enough to no longer threaten. You can travel with us, she said to Jacob, but you stay in front where I can see you. You don't touch any of the children without my permission. And if I think for 1 second that you're a danger to them, you'll put a bullet in my brain. Jacob nodded. Fair enough. I wouldn't expect anything less. He turned back to the fire, settled down, and resumed his story as though nothing had happened. So anyway, the coyote says to the horse. Kate watched him, her heart pounding, her hand still tight on the gun. 15 years she had run from this man. 15 years of prayers and penance and pretending that the woman who had loved him was dead. Now here he was sitting by her fire telling stories to her children. And God help her, part of her was glad. The first attack came 3 days later. They were threading their way through a narrow canyon, single file, with Kate at the lead and Jacob bringing up the rear. The walls rose sheer on either side, red stone streaked with black, and the sun beat down from a sky the color of bleached bone. Kate didn't like it. Too exposed. Too easy to trap. But it was the fastest route west, and speed mattered now. Cortez was getting closer. Jacob had found tracks that morning. Fresh tracks less than a day old, and the children were beginning to fray. Maria's ankle was healing, but she tired easily. Samuel had developed a cough that worried Kate. Even Thomas, the steadiest of them, jumped at shadows and slept with his hand on his knife. They needed to reach safety. They needed to reach it soon. The first shot hit the rock 3 feet from Kate's head. She was off her horse before the echo faded, dragging Maria from the wagon seat, shouting instructions that came from somewhere deeper than thought. Down, everyone, down, get a bird, under the bag, out of the wagon. More shots, chips of stone flying. The children screaming, scattering, diving for cover as Kate had taught them. Thomas herded the younger ones toward the wagon, shielding them with his body, his face white, but his hand steady. Kate pressed herself against the canyon wall and looked for targets. 3 of them. Up on the rim, 40 feet above. They had the high ground, the sun at their backs, all the advantages. She raised her Colt and fired. One man spun away from the edge, clutching his shoulder. Not dead, but out of the fight. Returned fire, chewed at the rock beside her. Kate moved, rolled, came up shooting. Another hit, this one in the leg, and another man went down. The third man turned to run. A knife sprouted from his back. Kate looked down the canyon. Jacob stood 20 feet away, already reaching for a second blade, his scarred face calm and focused. The throwing knife was the 4th she had seen him use. He carried them the way other men carried bullets, and he was terrifyingly good with them. 2 down, 1 wounded, Jacob called. Scouts, Cortez will know we're here. He already knew. Kate moved toward the wagon, counting heads, checking for injuries. All 12 children accounted for. Frightened, some of them crying, but alive and unharmed. Samuel was clutching his Bible and praying. Lily had retreated into her silence. Maria was crying against Thomas's chest, and Thomas was letting her one hand on her back and the other on his knife. They were surviving. That was what mattered. We need to move, Jacob said. Now before more come. Kate nodded. Get them into the wagon. I'll take point. They moved. That night, Kate killed a man. It happened fast. One moment she was circling the camp's perimeter, checking shadows, looking for threats. The next, a figure lunged from behind a boulder knife gleaming in the starlight, aimed at her throat. She didn't think, didn't pray, didn't hesitate. She shot him in the chest. The man dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Kate stood over him, gun still raised, watching the life drain from his eyes. He was young, younger than she'd expected, with dark hair and a face that might have been handsome in better light. She felt nothing. That was what scared her most. Jacob found her there, still standing over the body, still holding the gun. He looked at the dead man, then at Kate, and said nothing. I killed him, Kate said. Her voice sounded strange in her own ears, distant, hollow. You saved yourself. I killed him. Kate, I don't feel anything. She lowered the gun, finally let it hang at her side. 15 years of penance, 15 years of pressure, and I just shot a man and I don't feel anything. Jacob was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Come with me. He led her away from the body, away from the camp, to a flat rock overlooking a dry wash. The moon was rising, painting everything in shades of silver and shadow. He sat down and patted the space beside him. Kate sat. When I first got to Yuma, Jacob said, they put me in a cell with a man named Cutter. He'd killed 6 people, robbed banks, the worst kind of outlaw. He paused. He taught me to play chess. Kate didn't know what to say to that. Prison changes you. It has to. You can't survive a place like Yuma without becoming someone else. Jacob looked at her, his good eye catching the moonlight. But here's what I learned: becoming someone else isn't the same as becoming someone bad. It's just adaptation, survival. I'm supposed to be better than this. I took vows. Vows don't stop bullets. Jacob's voice was gentle. You killed that man because otherwise he would have killed you, and then those children would have no one. That's not murder, Kate. That's mathematics. Is that what you tell yourself when you do what you do? I tell myself that some people make choices that put them in front of other people's guns. That man made his choice. You made yours. His choice got him killed. Yours kept you alive. Jacob leaned back, looking up at the stars. Does that make you a saint? No, but it doesn't make you a monster either. Kate was quiet for a long time. I lost our baby, she said finally. The words came out barely a whisper. After they took you, I was running and they caught me 3 men on the road and I fought them off, but I was pregnant in the fighting. She stopped, breathed. I lost her. It was a girl. I knew it was a girl. Jacob went very still. I didn't just run from you, Kate continued. I ran from myself. I killed those men, all 3 of them, and then I tracked down their camp and killed 4 more. Because I couldn't feel anything except rage. I couldn't stop. I wanted to kill everyone in the world because the world had taken my baby. Her voice broke. The mission saved me. Agnes saved me. She gave me a purpose that wasn't violence, wasn't killing, wasn't rage. Kate wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. And now I'm doing it again. Killing. And I'm afraid, Jacob, I'm afraid I'll turn back into that woman who couldn't stop. Jacob reached over and took her hand. That woman, he said quietly, was a mother who had just lost her child. She was in pain. She was broken. And she still found her way back. I don't know if I can do it again. You already have. He squeezed her fingers. Every day you choose to protect instead of destroy. Every day you teach those kids instead of hunting the men who threaten them. That's not survival, Kate. That's grace. Kate looked at him. At the man who had loved her, lost her, suffered for 10 years because she had been too broken to save him. I'm sorry, she said, for leaving you, for never coming back. I told you to run. I should have fought, and we both would have died. Jacob shook his head. I've had 10 years to think about that night, to run it through my head 1,000 different ways. And every scenario where you stay ends with both of us dead. You did the right thing. It didn't feel right. The right thing rarely does. They sat in silence for a while, watching the moon rise higher. Kate's hand stayed in Jacob's, a connection she hadn't felt in 15 years, a warmth she had thought she would never feel again. We should get back, she said finally. The children, Thomas is watching them. He's good, that boy. Reminds me of someone. Who, you? Jacob smiled, and for a moment he looked like the man she remembered, the one who had laughed with her under starlight and promised her horses in California. All that anger, all that determination, all that desperate need to protect the people he loves. Kate thought about Thomas, about his dark eyes and his steady hands, and his refusal to give up even when giving up would have been easier. He's going to be all right, she said. When this is over, he's going to be all right. So are you. Jacob stood and offered her his hand. Come on, the night's not getting any younger. Kate let him help her up, let herself lean against him for one moment, one breath before pulling away. Jacob, yeah, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're alive. He smiled again, sadder this time. That makes one of us. They walked back to camp in silence. Cortez came for them on the 14th day. They were camped in a box canyon with a spring at the far end, A defensible position Kate had thought with high walls on three sides and only one way in. She had been wrong. The banditos came in through the canyon mouth at dawn, 16 of them on horseback spreading across the entrance, in a wall of horseflesh and gunmetal. At their head rode a man who could only be Cortez, big, broad-shouldered, with a burn scar covering half his face and eyes that looked like holes punched in leather. Kate and Jacob positioned themselves in front of the wagon guns drawn, shielding the children behind them. Thomas crouched beside the rear wheel, knife in hand, ready to defend the little ones if the line broke. "Sister Catherine," Cortez's voice echoed off the canyon walls. "So good to finally meet you. My men have told me so much about you." Kate didn't answer. She was counting 16 men, maybe 17 all armed, all mounted. The math was not in their favor. "I have a proposal," Cortez continued. "One that might interest you." "I'm listening." "I want the children. All 12. He smiled, and it was the ugliest thing Kate had ever seen. "In exchange, you and your companion can walk away. No harm done. My word on it." "Your word." Kate's voice was flat. "The word of a man who sells children to mines in Mexico." Cortez's smile didn't waver. "Business is business, sister. Surely even a nun understands that." He spread his hands. "I'm giving you a chance most people never get. Life, freedom, and all you have to do is step aside." Kate thought about the children huddled behind her, about Thomas with his knife, about Maria still limping from the snake bite, and Samuel with his Bible, and Lily who hadn't spoken a word until 3 days ago. "No," she said. Cortez sighed. "I was afraid you'd say that." He raised his hand. His men leveled their weapons. "Wait," Jacob stepped forward. "Take me instead. I'm worth something. There's a bounty on my head. $500. That's more than you'll get for any of those kids." Cortez laughed. "A generous offer, senor, but I'm afraid the children are worth more to my buyers than you are to the law." He looked at Kate. "Last chance, sister. Walk away." Kate raised her gun. "Then you leave me no choice." Cortez began to raise his hand again. "I have a counteroffer." The voice came from behind Cortez, from the canyon mouth, from Kate's heart stopped. A boy, perhaps 14, riding a mule and carrying a white flag fashioned from a torn bedsheet. "My father is Marshal James Whitfield," the boy said. "He's in Tombstone, 3 days' ride from here. I can get you 10 times what those children are worth if you let them go." Thomas made a strangled sound. The boy on the mule was looking at him across the canyon, eyes the same dark shade, jaw the same stubborn set. His brother. Thomas's brother who had escaped the night their father was hanged. The brother everyone thought was dead. Cortez looked interested. "A marshal's son? That does change things." "Danny," Thomas's voice cracked. "What are you doing?" "Saving your life, Tom." Danny's voice was steady despite his age. "Like you saved mine." Kate's mind raced. 2 boys, 2 brothers, 1 bargaining chip that Cortez hadn't expected. It might be enough. It might not. "Here's what's going to happen," Danny continued. He was good, Kate realized. Calm under pressure, just like his brother. "You take me as collateral. Let the wagon go. I'll lead you to Tombstone and you can negotiate with my father. Everyone walks away alive. And if your father decides to fight instead of pay, he won't." Danny's voice didn't waver. "I'm all he has left." Cortez considered. Kate could see him calculating risk versus reward, certainty versus gamble. "I have a counter offer," Cortez said finally. "I take the boy and half the children. 6. Your choice which 6, and the rest of you walk away." Kate's blood went cold. "No," she said. "That wasn't a request, sister." Cortez's smile was gone. "I'm trying to be reasonable here, but my patience has limits. And so does mine." Kate fired. The shot took Cortez's hat off his head, just as it had taken the drifter's hat at Willow Springs. The bandito leader flinched, and in that moment of distraction, Jacob moved 2 knives flying, 2 men falling, and suddenly the canyon erupted in gunfire. Kate threw herself behind a boulder, dragging Thomas with her. Danny, brave, foolish Danny, had abandoned his mule and was running for cover, bullets kicking up dust around his feet. Jacob was in the open, firing, reloading, firing again. "Get the children out," Kate shouted. "The back of the canyon. There's a crack in the wall. Go." Thomas didn't hesitate. He grabbed his brother, grabbed the nearest children and ran. Kate stood and fired. One shot, two, three. Men fell. More came. She lost track of time, lost track of anything except the gun in her hand and the targets in front of her and the desperate need to buy time for the children to escape. A bullet grazed her arm. Another shattered the rock beside her head. She kept firing, and then silence. Kate looked up. Cortez and his men were retreating, pulling back through the canyon mouth, leaving half a dozen bodies on the ground. Jacob was leaning against the wagon, bleeding from a wound in his side, but still standing. "They'll be back," he said. "Cortez doesn't give up that easy." "I know." Kate looked toward the back of the canyon. Thomas was there with the children, with Danny. All alive, all safe, for now. "We need a plan," Jacob said. "A real one, not just running and fighting." Kate nodded. Her arm was burning where the bullet had grazed it. Her ears were ringing from the gunfire. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. But her hands were steady. "Gather everyone," she said. "We need to talk." The plan came from Thomas. They were huddled in a narrow crack at the back of the canyon, 12 children and 2 adults, and one unexpected addition with Cortez's men somewhere outside waiting for them to emerge. The sun was setting, painting the walls blood red, and time was running out. "There's an old mine about 2 miles from here," Thomas said. He had a map spread on his knee. One of the children had found it in the ghost town apparently, and Thomas had been carrying it ever since. "Silver Creek Mine. It closed years ago, but the tunnels should still be there." "What good does that do us?" Jacob asked. "The tunnels connect to a ventilation shaft on the far side of the hill. It's too small for a man to fit through, but—" Thomas looked at Kate. "A kid could make it." Kate studied the map. "You're suggesting we use the mine as a trap. Lead them in. Bring down the tunnel. Anyone not killed in the collapse can be picked off when they try to dig out." "That's not a plan a 12-year-old should be coming up with." "I'm almost 13. Thomas's voice was flat. "And my father taught me to think tactically before they killed him." Kate and Jacob exchanged a look. "It could work," Jacob said slowly, "but someone would have to stay in the mine to trigger the collapse. And that someone would have to get out through the ventilation shaft before the whole thing comes down." "I'll do it," Thomas said. "No." Kate's response was immediate. "Absolutely not. I'm the only one who can." The boy's voice didn't waver. "I'm the only one small enough to fit through the shaft and old enough to handle the dynamite. Unless you want to ask one of the little kids to do it." Kate looked at the other children. At Samuel with his Bible. At Maria still limping. At Lily clutching her rag doll. At Danny Thomas's brother, who had just ridden back into his life after months of believing him dead. There has to be another way. "There isn't." Thomas stood. "You've spent the last 2 weeks teaching me to survive Sister Kate. Now let me use what I learned. This isn't survival. This is choice." The boy's dark eyes held hers. "You told me choices are what define us. Well, I'm choosing to protect my family. All of them." He looked at the younger children, at his brother. "That's my choice." Kate wanted to argue, wanted to forbid it, wanted to do anything except agree to let a 12-year-old boy risk his life for a plan that might not even work. But she looked at Thomas, at the determination in his face, the steadiness in his hands, the man he was becoming, despite the boy he still was, and she knew there was no other option. "I'll go with him," Jacob said quietly. "Make sure he gets out." "Jacob, I've got nothing left to lose, Kate. Let me do this." Kate closed her eyes. 15 years ago, she had run from this man because she couldn't bear to watch him die. Now she was going to watch him walk into a death trap of his own making. "If you don't come back, then you'll get the children to San Francisco like you promised." Jacob touched her face. "This is my choice too." Kate opened her eyes, looked at him, really looked at him, maybe for the first time since he had walked back into her life. "I love you," she said. "I never stopped. Even when I was running, even when I was praying, I never stopped." "I know." Jacob smiled, and it was the saddest thing she had ever seen. "Why do you think I kept going all those years in Yuma? Why do you think I survived?" He kissed her forehead. "Take care of them," he said. "All of them." And then he was gone, Thomas at his side, walking into the darkness with a map in one hand and a prayer in the other. Kate didn't sleep that night. She sat with the children in the narrow crack of the canyon, listening to the distant sounds of Cortez's men waiting for word that the trap was set. Danny had told her about his escape from the men who hanged their father, hiding in a root cellar, listening to his mother scream running when the flames started. He had been on his own for 3 months before he picked up the trail of his brother's wagon. "I thought Tom was dead," he said quietly. "When I saw the fire, I thought—" "He thought the same about you," Kate said. "You have no idea how much this will mean to him, having you back. If he survives." Kate didn't have an answer for that. Samuel was praying. Lily was silent. Maria was sleeping exhausted from the day's terror, curled against Kate's side like a cat. The other children clustered together, drawing strength from each other's presence. "Sister Kate." It was Samuel. His voice was quiet, uncertain. "Yes, if Thomas dies. Is it because God wanted him to? Or because we didn't have enough faith?" Kate closed her eyes. It was the question she had been dreading. The question she didn't know how to answer. "I don't think faith works that way," she said slowly. "I don't think God keeps score trading miracles for prayers. I think—" She paused. "I think faith is about trust. Trusting that whatever happens, we're not alone. That there's meaning in our choices even when we can't see it. But if Thomas dies, it will be because he chose to protect the people he loved. That's the bravest kind of faith there is." Kate opened her eyes, looked at the boy. "And I will mourn him. I will grieve, but I won't blame God. I'll blame the men who forced him to make that choice." Samuel was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay," he said. "I think I understand." "Good." Kate managed a faint smile. "Because honestly, I'm not sure I understand it myself." The night stretched on. Kate watched the stars wheel overhead, listened to the children breathe and prayed in the way that Agnes had taught her, not with words, but with the fierce and desperate hope that lived in the marrow of her bones. "Please," she thought, "please let them come back. Both of them." No answer came. But then she hadn't expected one. She found Lily beside her when dawn came gray and cold. The girl was staring at her with those solemn, silent eyes, the rag doll clutched tight to her chest. She hadn't spoken since the night her parents died, almost 2 years of silence, broken only 3 days ago when she had whispered, "Thank you," and nothing more. Now she opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Scared," she said. Kate felt her throat tighten. "I know, sweetheart. I'm scared too." "Thomas, come back." "I hope so." Lily nodded slowly. She looked at the doll in her hands, at its button eyes and yarn hair and body worn soft from years of being held. "Mama gave me," she said. "Said, protect me. Always." She looked up at Kate. "You protect us. Always." "I'm trying." "No," Lily shook her head. "You do, like Mama. You do." Kate didn't trust herself to speak. She pulled Lily into her arms and held her, feeling the girl's small body warm against her chest, feeling something crack open in her heart that had been sealed shut for 15 years. This was why she had made the choice. This was why she had picked up the gun and put on the gun belt and walked back into a life she had tried to leave behind. Not for redemption, not for penance, for love. The simple, terrifying, overwhelming love of a mother for her children, children who weren't hers by blood, but were hers in every way that mattered. "I'm going to get you to San Francisco," Kate whispered into Lily's hair. "All of you, whatever it takes." Lily didn't answer, but she held on tighter. That was enough. Dawn broke cold and gray over the canyon. Kate stood at the entrance to the narrow crack where the children huddled, watching the sky lighten by degrees, listening to the distant sounds of Cortez's men making camp. They had pulled back in the night, regrouping, she knew, planning their next assault. They had time. They had numbers. They could afford to wait. She could not. Behind her, the children were stirring. Danny sat with his brother, the two of them speaking in low voices, catching up on months of separation. Samuel was leading the younger ones in morning prayers, his voice steady despite the fear that still lingered in his eyes. Maria had attached herself to Lily, the two girls holding hands as if letting go would mean losing each other forever. And somewhere out there in the abandoned mine 2 miles to the north, Thomas and Jacob were preparing a trap that might kill them both. Kate closed her eyes. "Agnes," she thought, "if you can hear me, if you're somewhere watching, I could use some guidance right about now." No answer came. But then Agnes had never been one for easy answers. She had always believed that wisdom came from within, that God spoke through the choices people made, not the voices they heard. Choices. Kate opened her eyes. She had made so many choices in her life, some good, some terrible, some she could never undo, no matter how many years she spent on her knees praying for forgiveness. But this choice, the one she had made when she picked up her gun and walked out of the mission with 12 children behind her, this was the one that mattered most. Not because it would save her soul, not because it would earn her redemption, because it was right. Sister Kate, she turned. Danny was standing behind her, Thomas's brother, the boy who had ridden into a standoff on a mule carrying a white flag. What is it? Thomas wanted me to give you something before he left. Danny reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded piece of paper. He said you'd know what to do with it. Kate took the paper, unfolded it. It was a drawing, crude, done in charcoal on the back of the map, but unmistakable. A woman in a habit holding a gun in one hand and a child's hand in the other. Above her head, awkwardly sketched a halo made of bullets. At the bottom, in Thomas's careful handwriting, the shepherd's cross. Kate stared at it for a long moment. Then she folded it carefully and slipped it into her pocket next to the tintype of her and Jacob from another lifetime. He's going to be all right, she said, and was surprised to find that she believed it. They both are. Danny nodded. He didn't look convinced, but he didn't argue. Get the others ready to move, Kate said. We leave in 10 minutes. The plan was simple. Kate would lead the children north toward the mine, staying hidden in the rocks and brush that lined the canyon walls. When Jacob gave the signal, 3 gunshots in rapid succession, she would take the children west toward the pass that led to California. By then, Cortez and his men would be dead or buried, and the way would be clear. Simple, clean, the kind of plan that never survived contact with reality. They moved in silence, the children following Kate in a long line, each one holding the hand or shoulder of the one in front. Danny brought up the rear, Thomas's knife at his belt, his young face set with determination. He was 14, Kate reminded herself. Old enough to work, old enough to fight, old enough to die. Please, she prayed as they picked their way through the rocks. Please don't let it come to that. The sun was fully up by the time they reached the ridge overlooking the mine. Kate crouched behind a boulder and looked down. The entrance gaped like a wound in the hillside, framed by rotting timber and the rusted remains of ore cart tracks. She could see movement inside, shadows flickering in the darkness, the occasional flash of torchlight. Jacob was in there, Thomas was in there, and somewhere below, hidden in the rocks and scrub, Cortez's men were waiting. Kate counted. 8 that she could see, maybe more hidden in the surrounding terrain. Cortez himself sat on a rock near the mine entrance, cleaning a rifle with casual deliberation. He had the look of a man who knew he had won, a man waiting only for the formality of claiming his prize. Kate's hand drifted to her gun. She could end this now. 1 shot. The leader dead, the rest scattered. It would be easy. It would be justice. It would be murder. The gun isn't evil, she had told Thomas. What matters is the hand that holds it and the heart that guides that hand. Kate lowered her hand. Not yet. Not unless there was no other choice. She turned back to the children, gesturing for them to stay low, stay quiet. Then she settled in to wait. The signal came an hour later. 3 shots, quick and sharp, echoing off the canyon walls. Kate was on her feet before the echoes died. Move now, stay together. The children scrambled up, forming their line, moving west as Kate had taught them. She stayed at the rear this time, gun drawn, watching the chaos erupt below. Cortez's men were on their feet, weapons ready, staring at the mine entrance. Smoke was pouring out, not the black smoke of fire, but the gray-white smoke of blasting powder. In there, Cortez roared. They're in there. Get them. The banditos charged toward the mine entrance, guns blazing, firing at shadows. They didn't see Jacob until it was too late. He emerged from behind a rock pile 30 yards to the left of the entrance, 2 pistols in his hands and opened fire. 3 men dropped before anyone realized what was happening. A 4th spun, tried to return fire, and took a knife in the throat. Thomas, Kate realized with a jolt, Thomas coming out of nowhere with the blade she had given him, moving with the desperate speed of someone who had nothing left to lose. No, he's supposed to be in the mine. But even as Kate watched, she understood. The signal had been a feint. The smoke was a distraction. Jacob had never intended to trigger the collapse from inside. He had intended to draw them in and trap them. "Jacob!" Kate screamed, but her voice was lost in the roar of gunfire. Cortez was on his feet, rifle raised, sighting down the barrel at Jacob's back. Kate didn't think. She raised her Colt and fired. The shot took Cortez in the shoulder, spinning him around, sending his rifle clattering to the rocks. He went down hard, screaming in rage and pain, but Kate was already moving, running toward the fight, toward Jacob and Thomas, in the chaos that had erupted below. "The children, Danny has them. Danny will get them to safety. I have to trust him." She vaulted over a boulder, landed rolling, came up firing. 2 shots. 2 men down. The Colt clicked empty, and she dropped it, drawing her knife in one fluid motion. A bandito loomed out of the smoke. She ducked under his swing, came up inside his guard, and put the blade through his ribs. He fell. She pulled the knife free and kept moving. Jacob was on the ground wrestling with 2 men at once, blood on his face, his left arm hanging useless. Kate hit the first man from behind, knife across the back of his knee. He screamed and went down. Jacob threw the second man off, found a rock, and ended him with a single blow. "Thomas," Kate gasped. "Alive!" Jacob was breathing hard, blood dripping from a gash on his forehead. "He's alive. He went after Cortez when you shot him." Kate didn't wait to hear the rest. She ran. She found them at the mine entrance. Thomas had Cortez pinned against the rotting timber of the mine's mouth, his knife pressed to the man's throat. The boy's hands were shaking, rage, fear, exhaustion, all of it pouring through him like water through a cracked dam. Cortez was laughing. "Go ahead," the bandito leader said. Blood bubbled at the corner of his mouth. Kate's shot had done more damage than she'd realized. "Kill me. Prove you're just like me, just like her." His eyes found Kate. "Hello, sister. Come to watch your little protege become a murderer." "Thomas?" Kate's voice was steady despite the pounding of her heart. "Step back." "He killed my father." Thomas's voice cracked. "He hanged my father, and he tried to sell my brother, and he was going to take all of them." "I know. He deserves to die." "Maybe he does." Kate moved closer, slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. "But that's not your choice to make." "Then whose is it? God's?" Thomas laughed, a bitter sound that had no business coming from a 12-year-old. "God let my father die. God let my mother burn. God doesn't make choices, people do." Cortez grinned. "Listen to the boy, sister. He understands." "Be quiet." Kate didn't look at him. Her eyes stayed on Thomas. "You're right. People make choices. That's what defines us. You said that yourself, remember, the night before. You chose to protect your family. And now I'm choosing to end him." No. Kate was close enough to touch at him now, close enough to see the tears cutting tracks through the dust and blood on his face. "You're choosing revenge. That's different." "How?" "Revenge is for the dead. Protection is for the living." Kate put her hand on Thomas's shoulder. "Your brother is out there. The other children are out there. They need you. I need you. Not the boy who killed Cortez. I need the boy who risked his life to save 11 kids he barely knew." Thomas's knife hand trembled. "He doesn't deserve mercy." "No, he doesn't." Kate's voice softened. "But you do. And if you kill him like this, helpless, beaten, you'll carry it forever. Just like I carry the men I killed in rage after I lost my baby. Just like Jacob carries the things he did in Yuma." Cortez's eyes flickered. "You lost a child." "Shut up." Kate's voice went cold as ice. "You don't get to speak." She looked back at Thomas. The boy was wavering now, the knife still pressed to Cortez's throat, but the pressure easing. "I wanted to kill the men who hurt me," Kate said. "I did kill them, and then I killed more because once I started, I couldn't stop. It took 15 years and a dead woman's faith to bring me back from that." She squeezed his shoulder. "Don't make my mistakes, Thomas. You're better than I was." A long moment passed, then Thomas pulled the knife away. He stepped back, his whole body shaking, and Kate caught him as his legs gave out. She held him while he sobbed ugly, wrenching sobs that shook his whole body, and she whispered into his hair the same words Agnes had whispered to her 15 years ago in a mission at the edge of nowhere. "You're going to be all right. You're going to be all right. I've got you." Behind them, Cortez tried to crawl away. He didn't get far. Jacob appeared out of the smoke, his face a mask of blood and exhaustion, and put his boot on the bandito's back. "Where do you think you're going?" Cortez spat blood. "Finish it then. You and your nun. Show the boy what you really are." Jacob looked at Kate, at Thomas still shaking in her arms, at the bodies scattered across the hillside, the smoke still pouring from the mine, the wreckage of a battle that had cost them all more than they could afford. "No," he said quietly. "I don't think I will." He pulled a length of rope from his belt and began tying Cortez's hands. "There's a marshal in Tombstone," Jacob said, "Danny's father. We'll deliver this piece of work to him and let the law decide what happens next." "The law?" Cortez laughed wetly. "You think the law cares about men like me? I'll be out in a year. Back to my business." "Maybe." Jacob finished the knots, then crouched down to meet Cortez's eyes. "But I'll be watching. And if I ever hear your name again, if I ever hear you've so much as looked at a child, I'll find you. And next time I won't be so merciful." He stood. "Kate, we should move. The children." "I know." Kate helped Thomas to his feet. The boy was still trembling, but his eyes were clear. "Can you walk?" Thomas nodded. "Good. Let's go find your brother." They found the children a mile to the west, huddled in a shallow cave that Danny had discovered during their flight. All 11 of them safe and whole, their faces lighting up when they saw Kate emerge from the rocks. "Sister Kate." Maria hit her first, wrapping her arms around Kate's waist and holding on like she would never let go. Then Samuel, then Lily, then all of them, a swarm of small bodies and reaching hands and tearful faces. Kate knelt down and held as many as she could, feeling their warmth, their weight, their life. "Is it over?" Samuel asked. His Bible was clutched to his chest, its pages bent and stained. "Are the bad men gone?" Kate looked at Jacob, who was lowering Cortez, bound and gagged now to the ground. Looked at Thomas, who was being engulfed by his brother, the two of them holding each other the way only family could. "Yes," she said, "the bad men are gone. Are we going to San Francisco now?" Kate smiled. It felt strange on her face, unfamiliar, like a muscle she hadn't used in too long. "Yes, we're going to San Francisco." The journey took another 10 days. They traveled slowly now, no longer running, taking the time to rest when the children needed rest to eat real meals instead of hardtack and jerky. Jacob's arm healed slowly, splinted and bandaged with strips from Kate's spare habit. Thomas walked beside his brother, the two of them talking in low voices, rebuilding the connection that 8 months of separation had frayed. Kate rode ahead, scouting the trail, but she found herself looking back more often than forward, watching the children laugh as they had not laughed since she'd known them, watching Lily hold Maria's hand and whisper secrets, watching Samuel read aloud from his Bible to the younger ones, his faith no longer fierce and demanding, but gentle questioning, growing. On the 5th day, Jacob fell into step beside her horse. "You're different," he said. "Different how? Lighter." He shrugged his good shoulder. "Back at the mission when I first saw you, you were carrying something heavy. It was in your eyes, the way you moved, like you were waiting for the world to collapse." Kate thought about that. Maybe I was. And now, she looked back at the children, at Thomas helping Maria onto the wagon, at Danny teaching the younger boys to whistle through their teeth, at Lily, silent Lily, who hadn't spoken for 2 years, laughing at something Samuel had said. "Now I think," she paused, "I think I was so afraid of becoming what I was that I forgot to become what I could be." Jacob nodded slowly. "Agnes was right about you. You knew her. I knew of her, heard stories when I was tracking you, the nun who took in strays." He smiled, and for a moment he looked like the man she remembered, the one who had laughed with her under stars. "She saw something in you that you couldn't see in yourself. She saw a lot of things. She saw you." Kate didn't have an answer for that, but she reached down and took Jacob's hand, and they walked in silence for a while, the desert spreading out around them in shades of gold and rust. San Francisco rose out of the fog like a dream. Kate had never seen anything like it. The sprawl of buildings climbing up the hills, the forest of masts in the harbor, the noise and bustle and life of a city that seemed to pulse with energy. After weeks in the desert, it was almost overwhelming. The children pressed against the sides of the wagon, their eyes wide, their mouths open. "It's so big," Maria whispered. "Is that really all one place?" Danny asked. "That's really all one place." Kate guided the horses down the hill into the streets, navigating by the directions in the letter she had carried for 3 weeks and 300 miles. And somewhere in there is your new home. St. Joseph's Home for Orphan Children sat on a quiet street in the Mission District, a red brick building with a fenced yard and a vegetable garden, and the sound of children laughing drifting from open windows. It was everything the letter had promised and more. The Mother Superior who met them at the gate was a round-faced woman named Sister Elizabeth, with kind eyes and a warm smile that put the children at ease immediately. "You made it," she said, clasping Kate's hands. "We had almost given up hope." "So had I," Kate admitted, "more than once." Sister Elizabeth looked at the children piling out of the wagon, at their dust-stained clothes and road-weary faces, and the careful way they stayed close to each other. "They've been through a great deal, haven't they?" "Yes, but they survived. They're stronger than they know." "And the man," Elizabeth nodded toward Jacob, who was unloading supplies with his good arm. "He—" "A friend," Kate hesitated. "A complicated friend." Elizabeth smiled knowingly. "Aren't they all well? Bring everyone inside. On. We have hot food and warm beds, and tomorrow will be soon enough to sort out the details." Kate nodded. She turned to help the children down from the wagon, to guide them toward the gate, toward safety, toward the future she had promised them. And Thomas stopped her. "Sister Kate." His voice was quiet, uncertain, not the angry boy she had first met, but not yet the man he would become. "What happens now to you, I mean? Are you staying?" Kate looked at the building, at the children already filing inside, their voices rising in excitement as they discovered the wonders of their new home. At Jacob leaning against the wagon, watching her with eyes that asked a question he didn't need to speak. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I need time to pray, to think. About what? About who I want to be, who I'm supposed to be." She put her hand on his shoulder. "Whatever I decide, Thomas, whatever happens, you're going to be all right. You all are." Thomas nodded slowly. Then awkwardly he hugged her. Kate hugged him back. Held him for a long moment, this boy who had come so far, who had done so much, who had reminded her what courage looked like. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what? For teaching me something I'd forgotten." "What's that?" Kate smiled. "That choices aren't prisons. They're doors." Thomas pulled back, his face confused. Kate just smiled and nudged him toward the gate. "Go on, your brother's waiting." She watched him go. Watched all of them go, Maria and Lily, Samuel and Danny, and the others whose names she would carry in her heart forever. Then she turned to Jacob. "Well," she said. "What now?" He shrugged his good shoulder. "I hear they need someone to teach the kids to ride. Horses, that is. Not that I have much experience with children. You seem to do all right. I learned from watching you." He stepped closer. "Whatever you decide, Kate, wherever you go, I want to be there. If you'll have me." Kate looked at him. At the scars on his face, the gray in his hair, the damage that 10 years in Yuma had done to his body. At the man who had loved her, lost her, and found her again, across 15 years and 300 miles. "I need time," she said again. "I know. I may not be what you remember." "Neither am I." He reached out, touched her face with his good hand. "But I'd like to find out who we are now, together." Kate closed her eyes. She could feel the weight of the gun still at her hip, the calluses still on her hands, the old violence still sleeping somewhere deep in her bones. But she could also feel the warmth of his touch, the peace of the moment, the strange unfamiliar sensation of hope. "Together," she said, 1 year later. The chapel at St. Joseph's was smaller than the one at the Mission, but the light was the same, soft and golden, filtering through windows of colored glass. Kate knelt in the front pew, her hands pressed together, her lips moving in the familiar rhythm of prayer. But the prayers were different now. She no longer asked for forgiveness. God had forgiven her. She understood that now had forgiven her the moment she asked, just as Agnes had said. The years of penance had not been for him. They had been for her. Now she prayed for guidance, for wisdom, for the strength to meet whatever challenges the day would bring. And sometimes in the quiet moments she prayed for Agnes, for the woman who had saved her, who had believed in her, who had given her the mission that had become her life. "Thank you," she thought, "for everything." The chapel door opened behind her. "Sister Kate," Thomas's voice. 13, now tall and gangly, still finding his way in a body that seemed to grow faster than he could keep up with. He had become one of the older boys at St. Joseph's, a leader among the children, a bridge between the newest arrivals and the world they were learning to navigate. Yes, there are some new kids at the gate, just arrived from Nevada. They're scared. Kate rose from the pew. She could see them through the window. Three children huddled together, their faces pinched with fear and exhaustion and the desperate hope of the lost. She knew that look. She had seen it in her own mirror 15 years ago. "I'll come," she said. She walked to the door, then paused, looked back at the altar, at the crucifix that hung above it, at the candle flickering in the morning light. On her breast, two things hung from a simple chain: a small silver cross worn smooth by years of prayer, and a single bullet, the last round from the gun she had finally put away, a reminder of who she had been and who she had chosen to become. The gun and the cross, not as far apart as she had once believed. Kate stepped out of the chapel and into the sunlight. Jacob was in the yard saddling horses for the morning ride with a group of the older children. His arm had healed well, not perfectly, but well enough. He caught her eye and smiled a question in his expression. She nodded. "I'm all right," he nodded back. "I know." 15 years ago, Kate had run from everything she was hoping to become someone else entirely. She had built walls of prayer and penance, trying to bury the killer beneath the saint. Now she understood that she was both, and neither. She was Catherine, a woman who had done terrible things and found her way back. A woman who could hold a gun and hold a child. A woman who had learned that redemption was not about forgetting the past, but about choosing every day what to do with the future. The new children were waiting at the gate. Kate walked toward them, her habit rustling softly, her hands open and steady. The same hands that had killed 12 men. The same hands that had held Maria through a snake bite, had taught Thomas to survive, had clasped Jacob's in forgiveness. The hands of a killer, the hands of a protector, the hands of a mother, the hands of someone who was finally at peace. "Hello," she said, crouching down to meet them at eye level alone. "My name is Sister Kate. I know you're scared. I know you've come a long way." She smiled, and it was easy now, that smile natural as breathing. "But you're safe here, I promise." The smallest child, a girl with dark hair and darker eyes, looked at her with the wary hope of the abandoned. "Really," she whispered. "You promise." Kate thought of Agnes, of Thomas. Of all the children she had shepherded across 300 miles of desert and through a firefight and into a future they never thought they'd have into. "Really," she said. "Come on, let me show you your new home." She took the little girl's hand in her own, calloused, steady, ready, and led her through the gate. Behind them, the sun rose higher over San Francisco. Inside, children laughed and played and lived and grew. And somewhere in a chapel that still held the scent of candle smoke and prayer, a single flame guttered and danced and burned on.